I'd like to call the Judiciary Committee to order. Please take your seats. Let's see if we have a quorum. Hobie, could you call the roll? The Judiciary Committee will come to order.
Senator Saslaw, Senator Norman, Senator Lucas, Senator Obenshain, Senator McDougall, Senator Stewart, Senator Stanley, Senator Chafin.
Here.
Senator Deeds, Senator Peterson, Senator Servo.
Here.
Senator McClellan, Senator Boysko, Senator Morrissey, Senator Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Senator Chafin is here by Zoom. I assume down in Russell County. Is that right, Senator Chafin? Anyway,
Mr. Chairman, I'm in an undisclosed, I'm in an undisclosed location.
Undisclosed location, okay. I hope it's in the country. Anyway, and also I have Senator McClellan has given her proxy to Senator Boysko. Is that correct? And the other thing is this. Delegate Scott has a bill, HB 5148, and it's been requested that be re-referred to Rehab and Social Services, the same committee that Senator Boysko's companion bill was sent to. So is there a motion that we re-refer Senator Delegate Scott's House Bill 5148 to Rehab and Social Services?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no. Motion carries. We do have one uncontested bill. That's House Bill 5049, Delegate Willett's bill. We have a speaker for that, and that's Scott Johnson, Virginia Health Care Association. Is Scott here to speak in favor of House Bill 5059, which is identical to Senator Marsden's Senate Bill 5082, which was passed by the Judiciary Committee 14-0 and passed by the Senate 36-0. So it doesn't look like there's much contest, but Scott Johnson, would you like to say a word in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, why give Scott a chance to screw it up?
It is identical.
It's second.
Been moved and seconded that House Bill 5059, which is identical to Senator Marsden's Senate Bill 5082, that this bill be reported. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed no. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, we move on to Block 2, which are similar bills to Senate Bill 5030, which is Senator Locke's bill. That was a omnibus bill, as you know. There are 10 bills that relate to the Senate Bill 5030, that is in bits and pieces at least. And the first one we'll take up is House Bill 5029, Delegate McQuinn's bill, failure to intervene. Yeah, Delegate Senator Deeds. That's right. There are 10 bills. There's a substitute for each one. Well, let's do one at a time. Yeah. Okay. And give the chance. Anybody want to say a word or two? Yeah. House Bill 5029. The substitute has been moved. Is there a second to that? Is there a second to the substitute? First of all, why don't we do this? Let's explain what the substitute is. Legislative Secretary Charles, are you there? Failure to intervene. Delegate Senator
Chairman.
House Bill 5029 substitute.
Chairman, Charles is here. The substitute should now be published or is in the process of being published. And basically the substitute just conforms HB 5029 to the similar part of Senate Bill 5030, Senator Locke's bill, so that it essentially takes the failure of a law enforcement officer to intervene in an on the lawful use of force section and the penalty section, and that is the substitute. It just takes
Okay.
30 and puts it in Delegate McQuinn's bill.
Yeah. Yeah. The substitute makes the bill identical to that part of Senator Locke's bill that dealing with failure to intervene. Is that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Has it been moved to adopt the substitute? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to adopt the substitute to House Bill 5029 to make it look like that part of the bill that was Senator Locke's bill? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay. Is there any discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Thank you. Speaking to the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, listen, from my perspective, we're going to have to do this a couple times now, but the House took a little bit different of an approach to dealing with these use of force issues. I think two of their bills, this one and chokeholds, create felony crimes for law enforcement officers for violating those standards. Our approach was to put statutory barriers in place and allow those barriers to serve as a trigger for decertification. And I would just note that in terms of our approach, it's my belief that the approach we took will be a lot more likely to result in consequences for the behavior we're seeking to address. Because anytime you start making things a crime, or especially a felony, the burden of proof to prove it goes up to beyond reasonable doubt, and the Fifth Amendment kicks in, and all kinds of other criminal procedure issues take place. And so if we're all about holding officers accountable for failing to intervene and using chokeholds or improperly using force, I just think this approach that we took is a better way to do it. And obviously we're going to have to talk about it in conference and reconcile it with the House, but I think the way the bill has been conformed, it's identical to what we're trying to do, especially after we make some of the other changes in these later bills. And so I think we ought to support it. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the substitute to House Bill 5029 be reported. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Are there any negatives? Okay, let's call the roll. The substitute to 5029.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servo. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey.
Aye.
Senator Edwards.
Aye.
8 ayes, 4 nays.
Mr. Chairman.
The substitutes reported 8-4.
And
Senator Obenshain.
I didn't bring this up before because I understand what we did, but are we supposed to be getting the substitutes online? Because I don't see that this one ever popped up.
Mr.
It's supposed to be online.
Okay.
Senator Serval.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, but and Mr. Chairman, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that all the bills that were part of Senator Locke's bill were eventually going to be incorporated into one bill. And given that her bill as a whole had a fiscal impact and went through finance, might be my impression that I'm not sure whether we can still, now that we've reported the bill, whether we can still take that, incorporate it, and refer it to finance. So I'm not sure that was the motion we just passed was the proper motion.
Mr. Chairman?
The plan is, after we pass each one individually, is to roll them into one bill with the lowest number, which is House Bill 5029, is one bill, and then refer that to finance.
Mr. Chairman, then I think the proper motion would be for it to go by temporarily and then deal with it at the end of the docket.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator...
I am under the distinct impression that we do not have the ability to roll House bills together and create one House bill out of multiple House bills.
I've checked with the Rules Committee and Chair, and she thinks we can. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I think it's in order that having voted on the prevailing side by which we just reported House Bill 5029, I move that we reconsider that vote so that we can pass it by temporarily.
All right, is there a motion to reconsider? All in favor of the motion to reconsider, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion is reconsidered. Okay, new motion?
I've asked that bill go by temporarily, or second Deed's motion.
Okay, the bill's been passed by temporarily. All right. So we move now on to the second bill in this category. Again, it's a part of Senator Locke's bill, and we have a substitute to that. This is House Bill, I'm going out a little bit out of order, 5112. 5112 is Delegate Levine's bill that also has the duty to report and render aid and with penalties. And this is similar to that part of Senate Bill 5030 related to
Mr. Chair,
failure to intervene.
does the
Yes.
substitute make this bill identical to the provision in Senator Locke's bill that does the same thing?
That's correct. It's my understanding.
Well, I would make a motion to adopt the substitute, assuming that that we can get it online.
Is it online, Charles?
Mr. Chair, from what I understand, is that this would be very similar to the identical bill to the Delegate McQuinn substitute that the committee just passed. So if the committee can incorporate bills together, as the chair just indicated, it may be appropriate to incorporate the 5112 bill into the 5029 bill, but I see that Delegate Levine has his hand up on Zoom and wants to say something.
Okay, is there a motion to roll House Bill 5112 into House Bill 5029? Is there, Delegate Levine, are you here?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I want to be very clear. Delegate McQuinn's bill has a counterpart in Senator Locke's bill, but my bill does not have a Senate counterpart. It is not in Senator Locke's bill. What Delegate McQuinn's very great bill does is it deals with the circumstance where you have a police officer seeing another police officer commit some unlawful use of force and intervening right away. And it's a great bill and I support it. But that's not my bill. My bill, HB 5112, which doesn't have a Senate counterpart, basically requires a police officer to report on another police officer's wrongdoing. For example, bias-based profiling. That's not an intervention. If an officer sees another officer pull over only black drivers, they have to report it, and if they don't, they'll be disciplined. And it's a way to keep officers from sort of protecting each other. If they see another officer commit a crime, maybe steal money from a scene, they have to report it, what their partner did, or face discipline. It's a very important bill, but I want to be very clear, it is not identical at all to Delegate McQuinn's bill, which is a great bill, but deals with more serious but less common circumstances than the one HB 5112 deals with.
Mr. Chairman?
So I'd like to present it on its own if I could at some point.
Senator Morrissey.
Thank you. Delegate Levine, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So your bill requires the officer, if he witnesses some wrongdoing or mischief by one of his colleagues, to not intervene, but rather to report, for example, to his lieutenant or captain what he witnessed. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Senator Morrissey.
Given that this component or that aspect of Delegate Levine's bill is different than the duty to intervene, I don't think it should be rolled into the other bill or incorporated into it.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Senator Peterson.
Delegate Levine, it says that if you see another officer commit a crime and don't report them, you yourself are guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor.
That's correct if that officer is on duty, not if they're not on duty. But if they're on duty, already there's law, accessory after the fact law, says that if you are aware of a crime being committed in general and you further that crime, then you would be guilty of a Class 1
Okay, well,
misdemeanor.
furthering the
That's
crime and
already
being aware of it are
Virginia-
two very
that's
different
Virginia
things.
law. what this bill says, if you're a law enforcement officer and you're on duty and you see your other law enforcement officer on duty commit a crime, like I said, maybe they stole money from a drug scene, and you choose not to report that, that you yourself are.
There's all types of crimes. I mean, income tax evasion is a crime. Reckless driving is a crime. Bigamy is a crime. Adultery is a crime. Are you talking about every single crime or crimes that you deem serious?
I am not. I'm talking about crimes committed on duty. Law enforcement officer doesn't usually complete his taxes as part of his duties as a police officer, nor commit adultery, nor things like that. This is, and it also can't be something that's incidental or technical. So it would be for when a law enforcement officer is committing crimes while on duty.
Well,
and the person has to witness it, have actual knowledge of it. It can't just be, that they heard about it.
it doesn't say on duty.
Yes, it does.
It just says witnesses any wrongdoing committed by another law enforcement officer. I mean, they could be off duty. They could be at a party.
And,
Mr.
and
Chairman?
It refers back to Section B, which talks.
I'm looking at Section B. Section B says any law enforcement officer who witnesses any wrongdoing committed by another law enforcement officer or has a good faith reasonable belief another law enforcement officer committed wrongdoing. There's no condition. So if I'm at a party and I see another law enforcement officer, I don't know, maybe he had too many drinks, maybe he's drunk in public. I mean, there's no limitation on this.
So, Mr. Chairman, D says, I'll read it out loud.
Yeah.
In addition to any other penalty authorized by law, the failure of a law enforcement officer who has actual knowledge of the commission on duty of a criminal offense by another law enforcement officer has to report such wrongdoing as required by, and they fail to report such wrongdoing as required by subsection B. Will be punishable as a class 1 misdemeanor.
Okay, well, I'm looking at B, and B has no restrictions on it.
Well, B is not a class 1 misdemeanor. B is if you know of wrongdoing committed.
Okay, but if you have something that's made illegal by code and you don't specify the penalty, it automatically becomes a class 1 misdemeanor.
No, sir. If you look at C, it says
I looked at
that
D, but
if you fail to report wrongdoing, so B is basically just defining what wrongdoing, saying you have to report wrongdoing. Okay.
Can you name any
then
other
C
profession
says,
that you have to report your coworkers if you know that they commit a crime?
on
Any
duty.
crime?
Yes, if they commit a crime on duty, you have to report.
It
them,
doesn't
or you're
say on
subject
duty.
If it's a crime, it would be a class 1 misdemeanor. If it's not a crime, it's just wrongdoing like bias-based profiling, you'd be subject to disciplinary action. So C spells out the non-crime wrongdoings. That's disciplinary action. And D spells out criminal wrongdoings on duty, and that's the class 1 misdemeanor.
Mr. Chairman, just following on Senator Peterson's question, I mean, some of the rules could be rules relating to the proper completion of vouchers or something. And so this turns, it would seem, every law enforcement officer into somebody who has an obligation under the law to, turn in somebody for incorrectly filling out forms, and their failure to do that may not subject them to a class 1 misdemeanor, but it may subject them to disciplinary action that will wind up going in their permanent file and pursuant to some of the other statutes that Senator Locke's bill may prevent them from ever getting a job with another law enforcement agency. I understand what the delegate's trying to do, but I think this goes much farther than that.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at the bill on Section A, it defines wrongdoing, and I'm happy to read it out. It says, wrongdoing means a violation which is not of a merely technical or minimal nature and includes bias-based profiling. So it would not be filling out a form. It would not be of a technical or minimal nature. And
Mr.
again,
Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman,
I
would ask.
And that's what's, by the way, what most good police departments already do. This language comes from the Alexandria Police Department, whose chief strongly supports this measure. It's good policing to require police officers when they're doing not technical or minimal nature, but when they're committing wrongdoing like bias-based profiling, to report it to the supervisors. Most times people who do these things don't report themselves. So it's going to rely on good police officers, I call it the good apples bill, the good apples to tell folks
Mr.
when
Chair, I
bad
think I've got a
apples are
motion.
committing misconduct. And all they have to do is tell their supervisor, and they should. And I've actually heard from the Norfolk police chief saying he would fire any
Mr.
police
Chair.
officer who tried to cover up this misconduct.
Okay.
So this, I think, is good policing practice throughout.
Senator Peterson.
Well, first of all, if City of Norfolk wants to do this on their own, they can do that, but this is a state law, and I think this is just too broad, and so I'm going to move to pass by indefinitely.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the bill be passed by indefinitely. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to pass the bill by indefinitely, call the roll, please.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
Yes.
Senator Deeds.
Aye.
Senator Peterson. Senator Servell. Senator McClellan.
By proxy, no.
Senator Boysko.
No.
Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards.
Aye.
10 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, the bill has been passed by indefinitely 10-3.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having had a couple discussions with the senator from Hampton, the clerk, with regard to House Bill 5029, it'd be my motion that we recommend or I move to report that bill and refer it to Finance.
The motion's been made, going back to the substitute to House Bill 5029, that the bill be reported and re-referred to Finance. Been moved and seconded to that? All right, call the roll on the substitute to House Bill 5029, Delegate McQuinn's bill.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Norman.
No, sir.
Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds.
Yes.
Senator Peterson. Senator Servell. Senator McClellan.
By proxy, yes.
Senator Boysko.
Yes.
Senator Morrissey. No. Senator Edwards.
Aye.
8 ayes, 4 nays.
The substitute has been reported 8-4, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, moving on to House Bill 5045, Delegate Delaney. Again, is there a motion to provide a substitute?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Sherrill.
There's some differences between Delaney's bill and the bill we passed, and I actually think Delegate Delaney's bill might have, her differences might have some merit that we ought to discuss. So before we make that motion, could we maybe take her testimony?
Delegate Delaney, are you here?
I am here, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Delegate Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. We did make some adjustments to this bill. You probably recognize this not just from the omnibus bill, but also a piece of legislation that I believe was passed out unanimously from a Senate member. I think Senator Marston carried this bill last year. And so what I'm trying to accomplish here is to remedy the loophole that makes it, to make it explicitly illegal for law enforcement officers to have carnal knowledge of individuals that they supervise. While many other individuals in the justice system are afforded this protection, the statute does not extend to, for example, an individual in the back of a police car or someone pulled over, at a traffic stop being asked to sit on the curb. That moment of true power imbalance, I think, needs to be specifically defined in the code, that carnal knowledge would be prohibited and that consent is not an option in those type of situations. So the difference between this bill, which we concluded in our House Courts Committee, would be to use, instead of the word arrestee, because I wanted to be very clear that this was not necessarily someone who was under arrest. So I do believe the language that's in the bill that passed as the Senate could pass in that omnibus bill and be an effective addition to the law. But what my bill then also goes on to do, so I think it could be seen as a bit of a separate piece of legislation, is that we have also stated in the legislation a person in custody of law enforcement officer, because I want to make sure that we're capturing someone who hasn't specifically been arrested, but that they're in that custody. We go on to define that as when in the custody of a law enforcement officer, when due to physical force, words, or action by the law enforcement officer, such person reasonably believes he is not free to leave under the circumstances. So that would go beyond the term arrestee, which was in the Senate version of the bill that's in the larger bill. This then captures, I think, a finer point of the loophole, which would be that true point of vulnerability, where there's a very clear power imbalance, and consent really should not be an option in that particular situation where someone does not have the freedom in their perception to walk away. They can't get in their car and drive away. They can't walk away. They feel detained, but that consent to sexual activity is clearly not appropriate and not even possible to give. So that is where I'm hoping that I can make the case for the language that my bill adds in addition to the bill that passed out of the Senate already.
Mr. Chairman.
Closes the loop further, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Morsi.
Thank you. Delegate Delaney, a couple of questions. Under line 13 in the PDF, where you refer to an inmate, it's already a misdemeanor or a felony for a corrections officer or deputy sheriff to have carnal knowledge, consensual carnal knowledge with an inmate. And I noticed that you also mentioned probationer or parolee in there, but this bill would not cover a probation officer or a employee of a county or city who is in charge of pre-trial supervision. Is that correct?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would say that we are adding to the already existing list of individuals that Senator Morristy listed there. We are adding law enforcement officer to that already existing list. So anyone who is already a parolee, an inmate, probationer, detainee, that list that's already in the code section, those are already prohibited. So we are simply adding another member of the law enforcement and criminal justice community with the term law enforcement officer to that existing list where carnal knowledge would be prohibited.
Okay. Follow-up question.
Senator Morsi.
Delegate Delaney, I understood very clearly when you said you're trying to protect the victim who was subject of a power imbalance, and that there does not have to be a technical arrest, but perhaps the person has been stopped by the police officer or questioned on the side of the road or goes into Kmart and questions somebody who's allegedly has stolen. I get that. And that has, your bill has merit. But my question is, often there is a genesis of a bill, something that occurred that made the legislator introduce the bill. What was the genesis of this bill that you wanted to make it a crime for a law enforcement officer to have carnal knowledge with somebody? Did something happen somewhere that caused you to create this bill?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator, for the question. Yes, indeed. In fact, there's a number of cases where this has been an issue. There was recently an article in the Washington Post, which some of you may have had the opportunity to read, where a woman had been held in the back of a police car by a couple of undercover detectives. She was not arrested, but she was given the impression by their actions and words that she was not under the ability to leave on her own. She felt detained there in that circumstance while they looked into whatever it was they were looking into. Her accusation was that they raped her in the back of the car. When she went to claim that sexual assault, their argument was that no, it was consensual. And I think that the position of the Commonwealth should be that in that type of a very clear power imbalance, where someone is not free to leave, someone who holds that much power over them to determine whether they're going to be arrested or not, whether they're going to be able to walk and go back home to their family that night or not, or the fate of their lives, that consent should never be a defense. And so that would be the intent of this bill, is to close that loophole, which is harming vulnerable people in our community, and ensure that the consent is not a valid argument when charges of sexual assault are brought forward in those circumstances.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Searle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have questions, I think, for counsel, if Charles or Steve is on the line. My question is with regard to the definition of custody. There's many different sort of species of being controlled by a police officer as you move towards being arrested. Between a seizure and an arrest, and whether you're in custody for the Fifth Amendment purposes, et cetera. And I was curious whether counsel thought we were better off, for purposes of defining this crime, adding these words in lines 41 through 43, or tying it to an existing standard like being seized or being in custody for Miranda purposes, or
Detained.
something else where the law has been more fully developed, rather than sort of inventing our new words out of whole cloth here.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Morrissey.
I think Senator Serville may be referring to using the word detained. I mean, there are two different things. Somebody is detained pursuant to an investigatory stop.
Right.
Somebody is in custody, and if they're in custody, they have been arrested.
Right. So
if somebody is detained, they have not necessarily been arrested. And I believe Delegate Delaney wants to capture that world where the person is detained and not merely in custody.
Right. Well, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sherwood.
Right. I mean, Senator Morrissey is correct. I mean, and also the way this language is written, one thing that occurred to me is that, some 50 Shades of Grey thing with a police officer would fall into this, which I'm not sure that's the intent. But I'm assuming we're talking about a situation where we're talking about an officer under color of law does something. And that's why I was questioning whether or not maybe we ought to not tie this standard to an existing legal standard like detained or seized or something like that. And that's why I was asking if counsel might have some thoughts about that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I understand the delegate's intent, and I agree with her. And I think that the concerns that have been raised can be addressed on line 13 if instead we use the words of a person who has been detained or arrested by a law enforcement officer.
Mr. Chairman, could I interject with some of the discussion that we had about this bill that landed us to this language and the word detained?
Yeah, Delegate Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the effort to get us exactly where we want to be. I appreciate the need for that. When we were looking at the language and had at one point considered the word detained, my understanding is that in this code section, a detainee would not necessarily capture someone who is being held unofficially, and that it would reference a juvenile detainee. So that was my understanding, was that in this particular code section where detainee is referenced, it may not capture who we're going for, which is why we wanted, that's how we landed on this particular piece of language, where we went on to define what it would mean to be in custody.
Delegate Delaney, if you look at lines 41 through 43, and have maybe counsel could explain this further, for purposes of this section, custody means, it goes on to say, if such person reasonably believes he is not free to leave under the circumstances. Doesn't that cover what you want?
Mr. Chairman, I think, Mr. Chairman, Serval.
Senator Sherwood.
Sorry, I think Mr. Benjamin was trying to pipe back in with his views on what Delegate Delaney just said, but yeah, that 41 through 43 and these words is what we're trying to clarify. But I think Mr. Benjamin might have had some further thoughts about it.
Mr. Benjamin, you go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn this over to Charles. I think he has a particular answer.
Mr. Chair, I think Steve's amendment does get at what Delegate Delaney is trying to achieve, without confusing the term detainee in the bill, because the way Steve has structured his amendment is a person who is detained or arrested by a law enforcement officer, so that the detention speaks to a person who is actually detained by a law enforcement officer. Where in the remainder of the section, if you look, there is detainee mentioned, which is, as Delegate Delaney said, the term is used for a juvenile who's detained, for juvenile detention, because juveniles aren't incarcerated, they're detained. So I think the way Steve structured the amendment is appropriate, which gets at both what Delegate Delaney is suggesting, that you're doing arrests and persons detained, while not confusing the two terms together, because detainee is linked to law enforcement officer.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sherwood.
So, Mr. Chairman, having heard that, it would be my motion that we make the amendment that Mr. Benjamin requested, which I believe would need to be made in multiple places, I guess lines 13, 19, 22, and that we would strike lines 41 through 43. And I would further ask council whether they thought it might make sense to add the word juvenile before the word detainee in each place it appears in the statute to make it crystal clear.
Steve, is this what you wanted to do? And what's wrong with this language on 41 to 43, reasonably believes, not free to leave?
Mr. Chairman, my concern, without having researched it, is that the language defining custody is the same language that is used defining custody for Miranda purposes, which is tantamount to an arrest. And so I'm afraid that it could exclude the very custody that the delegate seeks to include in the bill. Using the word detained or arrested, that includes both forms of custody that exist beyond consensual encounters with police officers. And so I think that we avoid some potential traps by saying detained or arrested. As to the remainder of the question, I would again defer to Charles, but I think he's got it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Boyce, go.
Thank you. Just a piece of clarification, perhaps I misunderstood, but I just heard the senator from Eastern Fairfax saying that he wanted to put in the word juvenile. Could we just get some more clarification on that? Because my understanding is this is intended for any aged person and not just a juvenile, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding properly.
Mr. Chair, to answer Senator Boyce's question, in the bill, it reads, an accused is guilty of carnal knowledge of an inmate, parolee, a detainee. And when detainee was added, it was added along with Department of Juvenile Justice, and that's how we know it's a juvenile detainee. And detainee is a term of art in the juvenile context, because when juveniles become, for lack of a better way of saying it, when they are adjudicated and committed, they are detained under the Department of Juvenile Justice. They are not incarcerated. They're not an inmate. Those words don't apply to juveniles. Juveniles are detained when they are in the custody of a Department of Juvenile Justice. So Senator Serville's amendment of putting juvenile detainee in front is probably a friendly amendment to clarify what detainee actually means.
Okay, what is the amendment then?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would again move consistent with what Mr. Benjamin said to, I believe it was, use the word someone who is arrested or detained in the three places that it's necessary. Lines 13, 19, 22, 21, 28, and then looks like 29, 30-ish, and then strike lines 41 through 43, and then also to insert the word juvenile before the word detainee each time it appears in these code sections. That would be my amendment.
Is that clear to everybody?
Mr. Chair, I'm still not clear about whether or not this is going to apply to adults as well. Okay, I just want to make sure that we hear that out loud. Thank you.
It is.
Go ahead.
No, it doesn't. This will still apply to adults. It's making clear that the word detainee in the various places only refers to juveniles, so there's not any confusion about what that means, given we're adding somebody's been detained in these other places.
So you're saying detainee only applies to a juvenile, or does it apply to both a juvenile and an adult?
The word detained applies to everybody. The word detainee applies only to juveniles.
Everybody understand that? Okay, are you clear about what the motion is? This is to the original bill, not to the substitute, okay? All right, it's been moved and seconded that the word detained or detainee, as the case may be, is applied in different places here in this House Bill 5045. All right, you ready to vote? All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right, so where are we?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if there's any public testimony, but I'm ready for a motion if we're at that point.
Delegate Delaney, are you okay? Do you have anything?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
any further?
thank you.
Any further words?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think I've made my case as best I can. I appreciate the work of the committee to make sure that we're getting the words right and closing what I believe is an important loophole to close.
Yeah, Senator Shervill.
Mr. Chairman, I was just querying whether there's any public testimony on the bill.
Any public testimony?
No one has signed up for that bill.
I'm not aware of any. Okay. Motion's been made that the bill as amended be reported, House Bill 5045, and referred to finance, 5045 as amended. All in favor of the motion, call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenchain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
Yes.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servo. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. Ayes 13, noes 0.
13-0. We got some unanimity here. Okay. Let's move on then. Thank you, Delegate Delaney. We appreciate your coming and speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
Yeah, House Bill 5049, Delegate Helmer's bill. We have a substitute to that as well. It's been moved by Senator Deeds to adopt the substitute, which to make it look just like that part of Senator Locke's bill relating to this issue. Has it been second? Yes, Senator Peterson seconded. All in favor of the motion to adopt the substitute, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Unanimously. Okay. Delegate Helmer. First of all, Charles, would you like to explain the difference between the original bill and the substitute, the Senate Bill 5049?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the original bill in House Bill 5049, the basic differences are that House Bill 5049 contains a different list of military equipment which would be prohibited, as well as it contained provisions regarding tear gas and kinetic impact munitions, which are more commonly known as rubber bullets. The Senate version did not contain any provisions regarding tear gas and rubber bullets. And as I mentioned, the list of the military items that could not be acquired is slightly, and essentially that's the differences between the bills.
Any questions? Delegate Helmer?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the council has described the differences in the bill well. We have an excellent opportunity here to ensure that our police are equipped with the right equipment and not necessarily military equipment inappropriate for policing.
Mr. Chair, can I ask?
Senator Deeds.
Delegate, are there examples where localities in Virginia have acquired the items that you included that we didn't from the military?
Yes, Mr. Chair. There are a number of localities that in particular have acquired the MRAPs. This bill would allow for them, as originally constituted in the House, this bill would have allowed for those localities to seek an exception where appropriate. The challenge with these multi-ton vehicles is they're generally, they were designed for combat. They're very heavy. They are not appropriate for neighborhoods, as the police have noted, said a number of times, and therefore particularly problematic and particularly militarized.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Deeds.
which localities have acquired those?
Virginia, Mr. Chair, I'd answer the senator that Virginia Beach definitely has one. There are a number of other counties. I could provide a full list. Don't have one immediately in front of me.
I have a question, Delegate Helmer. It says tracked armored vehicles. Is that overly broad, or is that a uniquely military vehicle? Quote, tracked armored vehicles on line 18 of the substitute.
Mr. Chair, I would answer that we used in the House bill a different terminology, not tracked vehicles, but instead mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles. Those are the multi-wheeled vehicles that have generally been used by police departments. Tracked vehicles, armored personnel carriers, and tanks have not been used particularly frequently, and so I don't think there are many municipalities that have tracked armored vehicles as described in the Senate bill, but I think there are a number of localities that have acquired through the federal grant program the multi-wheel mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, which the House bill deals with.
Well, let me ask counsel, is this, I'm concerned that tracked armored vehicles is overly broad unless there's a closer definition.
Mr. Chair, I'll say your criticism may be valid, but that is the part of the bill that it conforms it with Senate Bill 5030, which the body has already passed. So the substitute you're looking at is language that the Senate has already voted on. So if you wish to change it.
I was aware it was in the Senate language too. Anybody have any comments about that?
Unless there's public testimony, Mr. Chair, I'd move to report and re-refer to finance.
Is there any public testimony?
Yes.
Delegate Helmer, you know of anybody?
There are a couple of people on the line.
Okay, let's see here. I have 5049. Okay, there are, Rochelle Brackney, Charlottesville Police Department. Is that right? In favor of the bill? Would you like to speak?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Judiciary. I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment in support of HB 5049. In order for any industry profession or person to thrive, self-reflection and assessment of one's approach to their occupation must occur. The policing profession is no different. Unfortunately, over the centuries, we as a profession had the opportunity to course correct and failed. We failed our profession and, more importantly, the communities we served and are called to serve. In order to be a better version of ourselves, it should not require national headlines, lawsuits, or community demands for reform, particularly around the militarization of our police department. And instead of relying on these archaic approaches, we should openly embrace the demands and not cling to our cultural traditions that have caused us to lose legitimacy in our communities. And it's through that lens that I support the HB 5049. Many of my colleagues will focus on the military provisions and restrictions presented because that's the easiest target and rallying cry. But I'm going to focus on the opportunities to expand our abilities to perform to excellence. This bill establishes the VA Law Enforcement Accreditation Center, the ability for DCJS to create compulsory minimum and uniform training curriculum and standards throughout our state for law enforcement officers, training officers, dispatchers, sheriffs, and correctional officers. The mandate to establish the research center and create long-range plans to strengthen and improve the criminal justice system throughout the state. In Virginia and nationally, as police professionals, we must embrace the necessary cultural and legislative reforms that the communities demand, and this legislation provides that firm footing and foundation for those changes. And I thank you for your time and consideration in preparing this bill.
Thank you very much. The next person is Lindsay Cohen.
Lindsay is not on the line.
Mr. Chair, I don't think we've adopted the substitute yet.
You have Dylan Bishop.
Dylan Bishop of the Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs opposed to the bill?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Again, my name is Dylan Bishop. I'm here speaking on behalf of the Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs. These are the sheriffs that have the primary law enforcement responsibility in their localities. I would like to thank the sponsor. The substitute ameliorates most, if not all, of our concerns but one. So I appreciate the sponsor doing so. The one concern I would like to raise to the committee is the language that you keyed in on, Mr. Chairman, about the tracked armored vehicles. We do have a number of instances, particularly in the rural areas, where sheriffs have the primary law enforcement responsibility, where they use military-like vehicles for search and rescue missions, particularly in karst topography where there are deep ravines, mountainous terrain, deep snow. So I would just politely ask the committee to consider an amendment where the language is more narrowly tailored to specify weaponized vehicles. I believe Senator Locke expressed an intention to consider such an amendment on the Senate bill once it reaches the House as well. So with that, I conclude my remarks, and I appreciate your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. So you don't like on line 18 of the substitute tracked armored vehicles. Is that right? And the reason is, explain that again.
Yes, sir. And I believe there's one other reference of tracked armored vehicles in the substitute bill, and that is because particularly in some of the more rural areas, sheriffs, where they do have the primary law enforcement responsibility, use these vehicles in some instances in search and rescue missions.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Peterson.
And this conversation is starting to feel like Groundhog Day. When he's talking about the substitute, he's talking about the bill we passed out of the Senate. In other words, Senator Locke's bill.
Yes, which is the substitute.
Right. So I guess we've already had this debate. I know Deed has already moved to report the substitute. So this is, I think at this point, something we're going to have to work out in conference. But the bottom line is I would second that motion to just report the substitute.
Let me ask you, anybody else have any concern about that language other than me? All right. Is there a motion on this issue? Okay, Senator Obenchain. You have a motion? No?
No, John did.
Okay, we got a motion from Senator Deeds that we've already adopted the substitute to report.
Mr. Chairman.
We have adopted
Okay.
Mr.
Right.
Chairman.
Yeah. Senator Serval?
I guess parliamentary inquiry, is it a motion to report or a motion to report and re-refer?
Well, have we adopted the substitute?
We have adopted
Okay.
the substitute. I feel
Yeah,
like
it'd be a
we've
motion
done-
to report and re-refer to finance.
Got it. If it's a motion to report and re-refer to finance, want to make sure.
All right, are you ready to vote? All in favor of the motion to report and re-refer to finance, call the roll.
Senator Saslow. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenchain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson.
Aye.
Senator Servo. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. 9 ayes, 4 nays.
9-4, the motion carries. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Delegate Helmer, and the Dylan Bishop and the let's see, the Rochelle Brickney. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members.
Yeah. Moving on to House Bill 5051, Delegate Simon, you're on. And this again is there?
You guys probably have a substitute ready to go that will conform mine. Mine's very, very close to a section of Senator Locke's omnibus bill. Only a few changes. Charles is nodding his head yes.
Okay, is 5051 is a substitute that would make that part of the decertification look like Senator Locke's bill 5030. And motion's been made to adopt the substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to adopt the substitute, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, Delegate Simon, do you like part of it?
Mr. Chairman, I know, I think that the changes you all made to have it look like Senator Locke's will probably make the folks on the other side of the aisle in the House very happy. It's what Delegate Bell and Delegate Gilbert were asking for. So it may give it an easier road and pick up some votes in the House. I suspect that, I'm certainly not going to try to interfere and mess up with the process at this point. So I hope that you guys will report favorably and send it up to Finance and be part of the larger discussion as we go forward.
Okay, I don't see any members of the public. Is anybody in the public like to say anything about the substitute to House Bill 5051?
No one is registered for that bill.
All right, is there a motion to?
Move to report.
Been moved by Senator Deeds to report the substitute and re-refer to Finance. Any discussion? I'll call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Yes. I'm sorry, Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servo. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator McDougal. Senator Edwards.
Aye.
9 ayes, 2 nays.
9-2, the substitute has been reported and re-referred to Finance. Senate Bill 5051. The next bill is House Bill 5069, Carol Foy, Law Enforcement Officers Prohibition on the Use of Neck Restraints. We have a substitute here as well. Been moved and seconded to adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, Delegate Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am here on House Bill 5069. This bill prohibits the use of neck restraints such as chokeholds to control or disable a person in police custody. And so I know that there are some changes or differences between my House bill and Senator Locke's omnibus bill that contains the definition of neck restraint. But for the most part, we are satisfied with our bill, and I can answer any questions about the language.
Is there any public comment?
Dylan Bishop is on the line.
I'm sorry, no one online. Okay.
No, sir. Dylan Bishop is on the line.
Somebody online? Dylan Bishop?
Mr. Chairman, Dylan Bishop here again representing the Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs. Again, here the substitute ameliorates a number of our concerns, but the members of the Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs have asked me to convey to the committee that, again, this is taking away some of the tools available in their tool belt to protect themselves and others. But again, our opposition to this bill is much more watered down now that the substitute has been adopted by the committee. So thank you very much.
Anybody else from the public? It's been moved. Senator Morrissey.
Question for Delegate Carol Foy.
Yes, sir.
Delegate, I'm going to support the bill, but I have a question. On line 16, it says any law enforcement officer who uses a neck restraint in the performance of his official duties is guilty of a Class 6 felony. What about the police officer who is standing by and observes that taking place and is complicit? Is that person guilty as a principal in the second degree, aiding, abetting? Would that be is that your understanding?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the senator and say that my understanding of the principles of criminal law, that would be something that could be brought My bill doesn't directly address that situation, but under the principles of aiding and abetting, co-conspirators, all of those things, it could potentially arise to that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think the substitute basically says the use of neck restraint is prohibited unless necessary to protect somebody's life.
Mr. Chairman.
Then it goes on to say the penalty is disciplinary action, but doesn't go to criminal action. Senator Searle.
I think this discussion is partly academic, given that we've already conformed this bill. But just so the record's clear, could counsel answer for me why the conduct prescribed in the bill is not already covered by 18.2 51.6, which is the strangulation statute that was passed in 2012?
Counsel.
Mr. Chair, Charles here. I think the difference between the strangulation statute and the neck restraint statute is police officers are typically acting under the color of law, and I would suggest that the strangulation statute probably does not apply in those situations where law enforcement is acting under the color of law.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just note 18.2 51.6 doesn't say it does not apply to police officers, but I guess it's academic at this point. We might have to take that into account in conference.
It applies to law enforcement officers. It's prohibited unless necessary to protect somebody's life. Is there a motion that the substitute be reported and re-referred to Finance? Senator Deeds makes a motion. Senator Peterson seconds it. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. Call the roll.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougall. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servell. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. Ayes 9, noes, ayes 9, noes 4.
All right, the substitute is reported and re-referred to Finance by a vote of 9-4. Okay, House Bill 5099, Delegate Arid. Again, there's a substitute regarding the search warrants prohibiting no-knock search warrants. Is there a motion on the substitute? It's been moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, Delegate Arid.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So the legislation before you, House Bill 5099, is a narrowly drawn version of the language that appeared in the Senate Bill 5030. And the language in Senate Bill 5030, that legislation addresses all search warrants, sort of requiring audible notice of their authority, and prescribes their execution with a number of exceptions. The original House Bill 5099 was specific to only no-knock search warrants, and it would prohibit the use of the warrant from any officer. It would also clearly define what the no-knock search warrant is. In addition to that, it also has similar language that requires the notice of authority and identity, and also make it so that any evidence obtained from a search warrant would be in violation of use. I know that there's further discussion to be had, but ultimately it's my hope that we could move towards a full ban on the use of the no-knock search warrants. I know that for all search warrants, the approach that has been taken in Senate Bill 5030 is commendable with the requirement of the specific hours of use, the approval of the judge and the magistrate, but as it pertains specifically to the no-knock search warrant, this approach is ineffective and sort of eliminated ultimately, which is the real problem, which is that the warrant is dangerous to both law enforcement and individuals that law enforcement is coming in contact with.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a motion. I believe I have an amendment that I think Mr. Quagliato prepared, although I haven't seen it. But so I would, I guess, preface it by saying that in discussing this legislation with, or Senator Aird's bill with her, it came to my attention there was some ambiguity about the language in the bill that we passed, in that the bill we passed does not clearly prohibit no-knock warrants, which I know was the patron's intent. And so I think Charles prepared an amendment to our language, making clear that no-knocks are out, but the judge approval for nighttime warrants is still in. And I don't know if Mr. Quagliato has that amendment.
Mr. Chair, so on the substitute, the amendment would be on line 89, striking out or without such notice, and then again making that same amendment on line 92, striking out or without such notice. So that it would read, these warrants shall be executed only in the daytime unless a judge or magistrate, if a judge is not available, authorizes the execution of such warrant at another time for good cause shown. So that the only exception to the warrant would be for daytime and nighttime service, not that the notice provision could be excused.
So, Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
I have the substitute in front of me. Where do you put this in lines 85 through 90? Where is it?
So on line 89, you would strike or without such notice. And then on line 92, you again strike or without such notice. So that the audible notice requirement is required for all warrants and not something that a judge or magistrate.
You would still keep it, so say, or for good cause shown would stay in there, right?
Correct. So it would read, essentially, authorize the execution of such search warrant at another time for good cause shown.
Okay, everybody understand that?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a clarifying question, if I might?
Please.
So if the language regarding except for good cause shown, is it my understanding that the no-knock could possibly be permitted if there is good cause shown?
Yes.
Mr. Serval?
Mr. Chair, to answer Delegate Arrow's question, I think you're misconstruing it. It's the authorization for such warrant at another time for good cause shown. So it's just the timing. So the judge could, because in the Senate version, the warrant could only be issued in the daytime, and the exception only provides for issuing the warrant for nighttime service. That is the only exception allowed. So it's not the no knock is always there. The judge cannot accept away the notice provision, just the daytime provision. That answers it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, speaking to the motion.
Yes, Senator Serval.
Which I think has been seconded. I just wanted to make sure that the committee supported this policy, which is why I thought it was important to do this now before the bill went into conference. I wanted to make sure that the committee supported a ban on no-knock warrants and with the existing policy that we left, which we've already validated, and that's why I've made the motion. So I renew my motion, hope we can adopt it.
I think I want to make sure Delegate Foy's question is answered about, Aird's question is answered about for good cause shown. The way I read this, it says, unless a judge or magistrate, if a judge is not available, authorize the execution of such search warrant at another time or for good cause shown. Is that right? And what does the good cause have to do with?
Mr. Chair, the or has been taken out as well. So or without such notice is stricken. So the line would read, a judge or magistrate, if a judge is not available, authorizes the execution of such search warrant at another time for good cause shown.
I see.
Section B, which might be an easier way to do it, is just saying a search warrant authorized under this section shall require that a law enforcement officer provide audible notice of his authority and purpose sufficient to be heard by any occupants of such place to be searched prior to the execution of such search warrant, and shall be executed only in the daytime unless a judge or magistrate, if a judge is not available, authorizes the execution of such search warrant at another time for good cause shown, or the search warrant is for the withdrawal of blood. So it is just providing for non-daytime execution. That is the whole purpose of that Romanet 1.
I'm so confused about the good cause shown. Good cause to get a magistrate as opposed to a judge? Is that it?
The good cause is authorizing the execution of such search warrant at another time for good cause shown. So that you would need to show good cause why you need to execute the warrant at another time besides daytime.
So the good cause shown, is it for nighttime? Is that it?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm not sure it's completely clear. Did everybody understand that? Okay. We have a motion then. We've adopted the line amendments, right? Have we adopted the line amendments?
Not yet.
Okay. The line amendments are basically to take out on line 89 or without such notice, right? Okay, that's the line amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on line 89 and on line 92.
Yeah, on line 92 as well, or without such notice. Wait a minute. Yeah, or without such notice. Is that right? Okay, in those two places. It's been moved and seconded that we take the line amendments be adopted on line 89 and line 92. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, is there a motion on the bill? Anybody else want to speak on the bill one way or the other?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Morsi.
This question is for staff. I'm looking at the latest PDF version, and does the language in Delegate Aird's bill still contain require that a law enforcement officer provide notice of his identity, authority, and purpose prior to entering the place? Does the bill have that language in it?
So, Mr. Chair, to answer Senator Morris's question, the bill, which conforms to Senate Bill 5030, requires a law enforcement officer to provide audible notice of his authority and purpose sufficient to be heard by any occupants of such place to be searched prior to the execution of such search warrant.
Okay, further question.
Senator Morsi.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Benjamin this question. Steve, is this different than what has been done in the past where the police, they announce themselves, such as Richmond Police, open up? Does this bill now require them to say, Richmond Police, we're executing a search warrant to look for drugs, open up?
No, I don't think this changes anything. The current practice is for the police to use 3 words: police, search warrant, period. And that would satisfy this bill. They're identifying their authority, that is, they're the police, and their purpose, search warrant. Hopefully, I mean, ideally, we want them to say a little bit more, but this bill doesn't require it.
Further question.
Delegate Senator Morsi.
To Mr. Benjamin, let's be practical for a moment. The purpose of this bill and other no-knocks are to prevent some of the situations that we've seen in the country where the police burst in and the people that are inside don't know who it is or why they're there. But let's be clear. If the police announce Richmond Police, search warrant, boom, and it opens up, does that really accomplish what we're trying to do, which is to alert the people inside that it's not some lay person who's bent on breaking and entering or that home, but that it's really the police? Does it accomplish that goal, in your opinion?
No.
Thank you.
Yes and no. The most important facet of this bill is requiring that the search warrants be executed in the daytime.
Right.
If you are in the middle of a deep sleep, it doesn't matter what they're yelling and screaming as they come through your door, you're going to be in a state of panic and fear. During the daytime, you have at least a chance of being awake, about your wits. Nevertheless, this bill will not alter, this bill does not prohibit the police from saying, screaming, police, search warrant, pausing a second, if that, and then using a ram to burst down the door.
Last question.
Senator Morrissey.
Mr. Benjamin, does this bill require the police to, or does it specify what audible tone they say police search warrant?
Sufficient to be heard by the occupants.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That raises the question of how big is the building? How sufficient to be heard by any occupants in such place? Suppose it's an apartment complex.
Mr. Chairman, the police are generally not quiet when they execute these search warrants.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, the motions have been, motion to report the substitute as amended been made. Senator Deeds? We've adopted the amendment, haven't we? Motion's been made to report and refer to finance sent by Senator Deeds and Senator Shervill seconded it. Any further discussion? All in favor, call the roll.
Senator Saslow. Senator Norment. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougall. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson.
Aye by proxy, I think.
Senator Servo.
Aye.
Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey.
Aye.
Senator Edwards. 8 ayes, 4 nays.
The motion carries 8-4. Then reported and referred to finance. Okay, thank you, Delegate Arid. Appreciate you being with us. Okay, moving on to Delegate Price, House Bill 5104. We have a substitute. Senator Deeds
Second.
moves the substitute. Senator Lucas seconds it. All in favor of the motion to adopt the substitute to 5104, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, House Bill 5104, substitute, Delegate Price.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members, of course, Senator Locke covered a lot of this bill as we've both been working on this issue for a few years now. But we can handle it in conference, but I wanted to point out one difference in House Bill 5104, and that was subsection 4 on lines 45 through 47. And this subsection allows for other related information to be conveyed if the former law enforcement officer's job performance had led to a resignation, dismissal, demotion, or suspension or transfer. And I believe that that's an important addition, Mr. Chairman, because that could capture information that would otherwise not be covered, to include, as I've spoken with some law enforcement officers here in Hampton Roads, potential racist, sexist, or homophobic actions that led to disciplinary responses but did not rise to the same level as sections 1 through 3 in that area. And so a lot of the agencies that are on this brink of social justice and wanting to be more friendly to the community and working with the community want to know more about these types of actions as they're getting the background information. So that would just be my one point.
Any questions of Delegate Price? I don't think there's any member of the public who's asked to speak. Okay, is there okay, it's been moved.
Second.
And seconded to report the substitute to House Bill 5104 and re-refer to Finance. Are you ready to vote? Please call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenchain. Senator McDougall. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servo. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. 8 ayes, 4 nays.
All right, the motion carries 8-4. The bill, the substitute will be sent to Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, Delegate Guzman, House Bill 5108.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm here.
Yeah, we have a substitute to this one too.
Move the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the substitute to 5108. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Is there? Let's call the roll to adopt the substitute. Well, one no. All right. Without objection, we'll adopt the substitute with one no. Okay, Delegate Guzman, 5108.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to point a few differences, I think that from majority of the House members, our perspective was to balance the membership from DCJS instead of adding more members. But I think both bills are accomplishing the same goal. I think what my bill is saying, we need 2 representatives from the civil rights organization. The Senate is saying 1. What I'm saying 2 representatives of the minorities. The Senate bill is saying 1. We both agree on the mental health provider, and once again, we're trying to reduce the membership of law enforcement. They already have a voice at the table, and that's what we intend to do. As long for the Committee on Training, I think the membership, we would like to maintain the membership to 15, while the Senate bill is adding the membership for 2 more members. And that's, I think that the main difference, it might be probably that we are not allowing in my bill for the committee chair to add an appointment. Instead, it has to be an appointment by the governor, Mr. Chairman. And those are the main differences.
Any questions of Delegate Guzman? Okay. Council, can you very simply, there's difference between this one and the House, the substitute in the House bill. What's the difference again?
Mr. Chair, Charles here. As Delegate Guzman just testified, it's very slight differences. The differences are kind of in the makeup of the boards. I'd say the main difference is that the House bill reduced the number of members on the board from the Sheriff's Association and the Chiefs of Police from 2 to 1, and the Senate retained that 2-member composition, the two members, and that's where we're getting 15 and 17 and the differences. So that's really the main difference between the 2 bills.
Any question of the council?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Obenchain.
Yeah, and as I recall, this is the one that allows or requires appointment of either an ACLU or NRA representative.
Mr. Chair, to answer Senator Obenchain, that is correct.
Thank you.
Dylan Bishop of Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs. Or, no, is this the one?
There's no one signed up for this bill.
No objection, okay. 51, okay, no objection. Okay, is there any further discussion? Is there a motion? We've adopted the substitute, so this is to report and re-refer the substitute to finance. Senator Sasslaw makes a motion, Senator Deeds seconded it. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Surville. Senator McClellan.
Aye.
Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. 8 ayes, 4 nays.
I think Senator Peterson voted by proxy. No? Okay. 8 to 5?
8 ayes, 4 nays.
8 to 4. Okay. The substitute's been reported and re-referred to finance by a vote of 8 to 4. Thank you, Delegate Guzman.
Sure. Just one point of clarification, because this bill on the original form was not referred to finance, but I believe since now it's being conformed to an omnibus bill, that's the reason why it's going to finance. Is that accurate?
Well, it's just going to finance.
Okay. All right.
Because we're sending everything to finance.
All right.
All right, thank you. The last one in this category is Delegate Hope's bill, House Bill 5109, dealing with officer training. And do we need a substitute? Delegate Senator Deeds moves to adopt the substitute, and Senator Serval seconds that. All in favor of the motion to adopt the substitute, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move to report the substitute.
Really? Okay. Would Delegate Hope like to say last words?
Unless you want me to talk about the differences, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us the difference very, very briefly.
Well, I mean, the thrust of this bill is to require Virginia police academies to adopt curriculum developed by DCJS. So that's the thrust of the bill, and that's a similarity. The difference is that we go a little bit further, and we're prescriptive in the code where it talks about the different levels of training and kinds of training, like bias-based profiling training that we feel is very important, de-escalation techniques, training for lawful use of force, when to use deadly force and when not to use deadly force. And a really important one is interactions with those with disabilities. It doesn't just include that language in for the curriculum for when you're in police academy training, but everyone that's an attorney, you also know that it's time to make sure you have your CLEs all complete. You have until, I think, at the end of the year, they extended it. But this includes in-service training that law enforcement officers have to do as well, too. And so for the first time, we would be prescriptive about what types of re-education that they need every 2 years. So that's the major difference, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any questions of Delegate Hope? Is there a motion to report and re-refer to finance? Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to report and re-refer to finance. Call the roll, please.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
Yes.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Surville. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards.
Aye.
Ayes 12, no 0.
Mr. Chairman?
12 to 0. Hurrah. Yeah, Senator Morrissey.
Mr. Chairman, what were the magic words that were used that caused Senator Obenshain to so quickly move to report this? Because maybe we can duplicate that in the future.
It was just my affection for Delegate Hope.
I feel the same way, Senator.
He's got the magic words. Okay. Well, 12 to 0. Wow. We're making some progress here. I think that, if I'm correct, that deals with all the bills that are similar to the Senator Locke's bill, Senate Bill 5030. Is that correct? Okay, let's move on to Block 3 then. House Bill 5043, Delegate Bourne. And I think there's some people that are here to like to speak for this bill. First of all, Delegate Bourne.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is very similar to a bill that was in the Senate as well. This is affectionately known as the Marcus David Peters Act. It is born out of the tragedy that happened right here in the city of Richmond, where a young man, Marcus David Peters, was shot and killed by Richmond police officers while undergoing or in the midst of a very serious mental health crisis. Long story short, the bill that comes to you from the House is a phased-in approach of requiring that localities have a community care teams, whereby when a call comes in for service and the call involves addressing a situation where someone's in mental health crisis, suffering from drug issues, developmental disabilities, they would respond with mental health professionals, and once on the scene, the mental health professionals would then take the lead in trying to de-escalate the situation. The bill prescribes training standards on de-escalation for these crisis situations. It defines the community care teams. It provides a definition of the Marcus Alert system, sets some goals. Also have development of a detailed implementation plan, which I think is an important part of this substitute, whereby once, fingers crossed, if it passes and reaches the governor's desk and gets his signature, the stakeholders in state agencies, DCJS and behavioral health, would then embark upon a development project where they would develop a detailed implementation plan for the first phase, the first localities that would be implementing this. They would have that ready by June 1 and be ready to implement by July 1. In addition, I think there's some other accountability measures that are built in this bill that requires reporting. An interim on November 1, 2022, such that any course corrections, additions that we would need to make as the General Assembly, we can do so in the 2023 session. Additionally, it also requires these programs to scrub, scour, and really invest some time in figuring out the resources that are available to implement this as well, so that we have a good, accurate depiction of what the financial impact and costs will be going forward. Again, there's a similar bill that came from the Senate, and this was really born out of a lot of work with the stakeholders, most notably Princess Blanding and her family. Princess is Marcus David Peters' sister. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Okay, any questions? This bill is similar to the bill we just passed out of the Senate, McPike's bill, Senate Bill 5038. Could council explain the difference?
Mr. Chair, I believe Delegate Bourne briefly kind of ran through the main differences. What I would say is that the big difference is that in the House bill, it does have a 5-year phase-in period that would require these systems to be enacted throughout the Commonwealth, where the Senate version takes a different approach to phasing it in and follows more with probably more in line with what the current practices of Step Virginia and other policies that have come previously before. And that the House bill is a bit more, I'll say, prescriptive or definitive in the role that law enforcement takes in these co-response teams. And I think those are probably the two main differences. The bills are very similar in the manner in which these teams will be used and deployed and have the same intent, but those are probably the two differences in the bills.
Okay, normally we just recently passed the Senate bill. We ought to conform to be consistent. conform Senator Delegate Bourne's Bill 5043 to the Senate Bill 5038, Senator McPike's bill. Is there a motion to do that? It's been moved and seconded to conform House Bill 5043 to Senate Bill 5038. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Any further questions on this? There's anybody want to speak? There's some people in favor of this bill, I believe. There's Princess Blanding. Is Princess Blanding here?
Yes, good afternoon. I am here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Yes, my name is Princess Blaine, and I am the very proud sister of the late Marcus David Peters. And as many of you may know, on May 14, 2018, after Marcus completed a full day of teaching high school biology, Marcus's life was ended at the hands of a Richmond, Virginia police officer, who I should note was crisis intervention trained. Marcus was murdered while he was unarmed, completely undressed, and experiencing his very first mental health crisis. To date, this Richmond police officer has not been held accountable for Marcus's murder. The police officer can be heard verbally acknowledging that Marcus was mentally unstable, as evident by the video body camera footage that has been released. Yet the officer escalated the situation instead of de-escalating the situation with a taser in one hand and gun in the other. The Richmond police officer murdered my brother, Marcus David Peters, when Marcus clearly needed and deserved help, not death. I joined this call to support Delegate Bourne's life-saving Marcus Alert Bill, HB 5043, that calls for mental health professionals to be the lead with the support of peer recovery specialists in the Marcus Alert system, with police present only as backup if the scene becomes unsafe or unstable, and that they will only be allowed to use non-lethal force. I also understand that this is a life-saving bill for individuals who have intellectual disabilities as well. My family and I support this bill overall. However, we strongly urge you all to amend this bill to have statewide implementation by July 1st, 2021 instead of 2026. We actively see that during this pandemic, crime rates are rising. And the same is true with the increase in individuals experiencing a mental health crisis, as many people are struggling with being providers for their families, facing unethical evictions on top of the strain that the pandemic has brought upon us. The time is now, not after more lives have been brutalized, unjustly incarcerated, and lost due to having a mental health crisis. Waiting until 2026 is unacceptable and reckless, and does not put community care and safety first and always. We expect that this bill will be amended and passed. And I would be remiss if I did not state that there are very, very strong differences between Senator McPike's bill and Delegate Bourne's bill. And in my strong opinion, after analyzing in great detail Senator McPike's bill, it is a very dangerous bill. And so again, I strongly recommend that you support Delegate Bourne's version with the amendment of an earlier statewide implementation date. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We're so sorry about your brother. Senator Morrissey.
A question for the young lady that just testified, please.
Princess Blanding.
Yes, Princess, profound condolences to you and your family regarding this, but I have a couple of questions regarding how this program would be implemented. Are you still with us?
Yes, sir, I am. Can you hear me?
If you could just speak a little bit louder, I can.
Sure. Okay.
I'm very familiar with the circumstances, and I believe your brother left Richmond and was in his automobile and was experiencing either a psychotic episode or a mental health crisis. Am I correct?
My brother left Essex, where he worked at, and was heading home towards his home in Henrico. Went home in Henrico, met his girlfriend briefly, and then headed to his second job at the Jefferson Hotel.
And it was at the Jefferson Hotel that police were first called because of his behavior and mannerisms. Is that right?
That's not my understanding. Marcus actually left the Jefferson Hotel. So you can see that Marcus drove up to, the footage that was released shows that he drove up to the Jefferson Hotel, parked, got out of his vehicle, walked into the Jefferson Waves. And then from what was provided to the public, you see kind of scattered footage while Marcus was in the Jefferson Hotel, him unrobing. You end up seeing Marcus appears to have a conversation with someone and ultimately running out of the Jefferson Hotel undressed. So the police did not encounter Marcus there. It was after he left the Jefferson Hotel, his vehicle hit two others that a police officer that happened to be within proximity and witnessed one of them pursued Marcus, and it ended with him encountering an officer off of the highway, off of 95.
Okay, and that's the point that I want to get to, and how, I want to understand what this bill would do. The officer is justifiably following Marcus. Marcus has already disrobed, and something occurs, and the car is pulled over on the side of the road, and he gets out of the car unclothed, and there is some degree of communication between Marcus and the police, correct?
There is no communication between Marcus and the police officer.
Well,
Marcus gets out of his vehicle. You can hear Marcus is oblivious, as evident by what was released if you watched it, and he runs towards the highway and begins to make what appears to be snow angels on the ground. Marcus does not have any communication. It's as if he's completely oblivious to the presence of the officer. But what we do know is that the officer we have not been told that he was not in his right frame of mind. And you can hear him saying, as he's dispatching, that the individual is mentally unstable.
Right.
There was not that communication between Marcus when he first got out of his vehicle and jumped and went to the highway. It was as if he was oblivious to the officer's presence.
So there's no noticeable communication between Marcus and the police. That's the point that I wanted to get up to. At what point does this mental health awareness response take place? What does this bill hope to accomplish when you've got that situation where an individual like your brother is not responding to the police officer's directives, and the police officer has a gun drawn and is agitated to some degree, and there's a person on the highway, and there's obviously some conflict going on because he's unclothed on the highway? What do you or the patrons see occurring next so that there is a proper mental health response that would avoid the tragic death of your brother?
Right, and I'm glad that you asked that question, and respectfully, it shows the misunderstanding that many people have. You cannot say that a person that is having a mental health crisis, hold them responsible for not following commands. Because as my role as an educator, as a school administrator, for over 6 years, I have de-escalated numerous situations with students and staff, okay? And if you know anything about mental health, and when a person has that break, what is logical to you and I is not logical to them. But again, I hear people, and as I heard in your voices, that he wasn't following the commands. Well, if you're not in your right frame of mind, how are you holding my brother to following commands? How do we know he wasn't in his right frame of mind? He was undressed. That is a clear sign. And the officer also acknowledged it as soon as my brother got out of the vehicle. So what should have happened is, for one, we understand that this officer, and it is factual, that he was crisis intervention trained. He did not use any tools to de-escalate the situation. And literally, the Richmond City Police Department continuously said how everything happened within seconds as far as when the trigger was pulled. But it would have taken just 1 or 2 minutes more before a whole team of backup came. And what would have ideally happened is when you heard the officer dispatching and saying that this person is mentally unstable, that call would have been going to the community care team. And instead of a team of officers who engaged in dragging my brother's body from the wooded area, okay, and talking about using more force after 2-3 bullets were already in my brother's body, you would have had people who saw my brother on the highway in his own little space, and they would have been able to de-escalate the situation and bring my brother into a facility to be evaluated so that he received help, not death. But you cannot tase a person and only one of the 2 electrodes penetrate, and therefore there's not a closed circuit, deeming it ineffective, and say that they did not respond. Well, it wasn't a complete circuit. The instrument, the tool, was not used properly. So then again, you can't use a taser and a gun and have two weapons in both hands and use them both with proficiency, 100% proficiency. Okay, so what ideally would have happened is the community care team members would have come. My brother had no weapon. The only thing that was a threat was the color of my brother's skin. It was automatically demonized as the ultimate threat. So ideally, that team of non-racist, non-biased people who are not deeply engaged in the systemically racist system would have come and rendered help to my brother so that he would have had his day in court, kind of like I'm feeling is going on right now. He would have had his time to be able to say what happened, what led up to, if he was mentally capable. But at the end of the day, having a mental health crisis cannot equal a death sentence. And that was my brother's final verdict.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a follow-up question with the patron, Delegate Bourne?
Senator Morrissey.
Delegate Bourne, are you still with us?
I am indeed.
In the last response, Princess referred to the mental health crisis team would have arrived, and we all know that in this situation, Mr. Peters did not have a weapon, and I can understand a situation where there was time to de-escalate and the circumstances had not risen to the point where the officer felt that he was being threatened, certainly by someone with a weapon. What do you do, Delegate Bourne, when in that same situation that Mr. Peters found himself in, he's clearly experiencing a psychotic episode, no question. He's unclothed and he's not responding to police officers' directives. Often it is the case that the police come to somebody's home, they're doing the same thing, but you know what? They're waving a weapon. Sometimes it's just a knife. I'm trying to understand, and because I support the spirit of this bill 100%. We sometimes don't have the luxury of calling in that response team to respond to that episode. What would happen if this bill were enacted into law and that same situation happened, but the individual was not only unclothed, but also was waving a weapon? What do you do?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would say to the senator that the way this bill is designed, you would still send the community care team, have the mental health professionals there, because we know that oftentimes when a person is in crisis like that, the mere presence, the mere sight of a police uniform, a police cruiser, can seek to amplify that crisis. And so, to the greatest extent possible, we would want those mental health professionals in a safe manner to try and de-escalate the situation. Obviously, our law enforcement officers have an overriding duty and responsibility to make sure that life and people are not harmed. But the real intent, the intent behind this bill, the way that we're working your scenario, would be to allow the mental health professionals to try to do the work that they've been trained to do, such that there doesn't have to be a tragic and horrific outcome as happened with Marcus David Peters.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to try to further amplify what Delegate Bourne was trying to say. You know, this bill is not designed to say what happens in every possible scenario. What this bill is designed to do is set up a protocol where if you have someone who is if you have a situation where police are called, and when they get there, they identify that that person is in a mental health crisis, that they immediately call a mental health professional to come on the scene. They're probably going to call for backup as well. Law enforcement secures the scene while the mental health professionals try to de-escalate the individual. And what this is designed to do is ensure that at the moment you identify this person is in crisis, that call is made. Now, sometimes that's going to be when the 911 call is first made. That's the easiest scenario. Sometimes it's going to be when law enforcement arrives on the scene, but the idea here is have the protocol set up in place from day one, not trying to figure it out once you arrive on the scene and they're there, with the idea of mental health professional takes the lead on de-escalating the individual, while law enforcement takes the lead on securing the scene.
Senator Morrissey.
This is going to be my last question, but this bill is so important and the scenario is so important. Let's be clear that when the officer first arrives, let's say that literally within 60 seconds he gleans that this person is experiencing a psychotic episode from his behavior and from his dress, etc. Let's say that within 30 seconds the call is made to dispatch. It's not going to be to anybody else. It's going to be to dispatch. I need a mental health response team here as soon as possible. Dispatch calls Henrico County Mental Health. They're in their offices on Hungry Springs Road. The team, I'm just trying to see how it works. They're going to respond as quickly as they can. They're going to jump in their car, and in this situation, they're going to drive to the area off the highway in Henrico where Marcus Peters was out of the car unclothed. I mean, I can easily see a situation where it's a 30 to 60 minutes before mental health response team gets there. I'm trying to determine, because I love the spirit of this bill, but practically and Senator McClellan said it a moment ago, the officer during that time is there to control the scene. Mental health is to assess and respond to the individual. What goes on in that 30 to 60 minute period before mental health responds? That Senator McClellan is what I'm really trying to focus on.
Anybody want to respond?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sturble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I recognize the Marcus David Peters scenario. I watched the video when it came out back when it happened, and I was really shocked by what happened. It was a very disturbing video to watch. But we have to remember that there's a lot of scenarios that happen, and if the Senator Morrissey would like to see a different video, I would encourage him to Google Fairfax County, Tyler, Timberlake, maybe Gum Springs, was a scenario that happened in my district about 6 months ago, where there was a man who was clearly under either some kind of drugs or having some kind of psychiatric episode, but he wasn't violent. He was just wandering in circles in a street, and paramedics and law enforcement were trying to get him into an ambulance when another officer appeared out of nowhere and just started tasing him repeatedly. And the whole thing's on video. But in that scenario, you have more time to get people there and more time to get them to act and do something. Or, for example, I had another Fairfax County officer who I had a long conversation with because we were talking about my assault on police officer statute, where he described to me where he was called into a house and for what they thought was a hostage situation. It turned out it was somebody trying to commit suicide by a police officer. And when the officer arrived, immediately the person started shooting at them. Turned out he was shooting blanks, trying to get the police to shoot back. And a hostage situation developed, and it took hours to resolve. But in that situation, you get a mental health crisis team there to talk with him, and not just, hostage negotiators wouldn't work. They didn't have any hostages. They needed a mental health crisis team there. So these all don't go down the same way as Marcus David Peters went. So I think we have to be careful we don't, try to legislate to one scenario. There's lots of different ones.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morrissey.
I guess I'm wondering why I haven't seen a bill come before me that says if an officer is encountering an individual experiencing, manifest psychotic episode and he does not have a weapon, why haven't I seen a bill that prohibits the use of deadly force in this situation? I'm almost finished. I get it, the situation that you described, and you shared that with me in a telephone conversation, and I certainly understand the situation with Peters, but his death would have been avoided if deadly force was not being used by the police. That's what I'm looking to see. an unarmed individual, in this case unclothed, just a bill prohibiting the use of deadly force in that scenario.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just say we might be getting a little far afield, but I would just note that anytime a person approaches a police officer in a violent fashion, the police officer has to be concerned that their weapons, whatever they are, the taser, the club, the gun, could be wrested from them and the officer's life could be in danger. And that's why officers have to respond sometimes to people that maybe aren't armed if they're being aggressive towards them. And it's unfortunate and bad, but that's my suspicion as to what law enforcement would probably say. But, I think we've had an informed discussion on this legislation and we've conformed it, and I think all this is going to have to be worked out in conference, but we also probably have some more public testimony to take. We probably ought to move this along.
Senator Borsko.
Just to Senator Morrissey, and this is Ms. Blandon.
Mr. Chairman, I just also wanted to point out the fact that we have already passed a bill that is very similar, and we've just conformed the current bill to the bill that we just passed. I want to thank Delegate Bourne for bringing this forward and for Ms. Blanding for sharing her very powerful testimony, and understand that this is something that is going on all over the state, that we have this challenge, and I certainly appreciate and plan to support it and hope that we can get this passed.
We do have some other members of the public. Princess Blanding, do you have anything else to say? I'd like to call Marwa El Taib.
I will conclude with just saying, Senator Morrissey, I definitely agree that we must find other non-lethal ways to address individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. And that's what the Marcus Alert Bill does. Does it address it to the extent as far as verbiage that you're referring to? No. And I strongly recommend that you go ahead and be a patron for that. But what I will say is that I strongly advise you watch the video footage of Matthew Bernard right here in Virginia. He was law enforcement officers knew that he killed some of his family members, and we can clearly see an officer running away from him as he is completely undressed. He chokes someone nearby, and they still found ways to de-escalate it. So to your question as to what do officers do as they are waiting for the community care team members to come, I'm going to help you out with that answer. They de-escalate and they value human life. They de-escalate. And so in the case of Marcus, he did not even get up and come to engage with the officer until the officer engaged with him. Watch the video. He was oblivious to his presence and did not engage until the officer engaged. So in that situation, he would stand off until that team came, more people came within just minutes. It's called de-escalation, and it's a part of the crisis intervention training. And thank you all again for hearing me.
Thank you so very much, Princess Blanding.
Mr. Chairman.
Marwa El Taib, is somebody
the other
by
callers
that name
on the
there?
line are Dominic Martin,
I'm sorry?
Dominic Martin, and Dylan Bishop.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dominic Martin, policy analyst in New Virginia Majority. I would just echo the sentiments of previous speakers and also echo what was said by Senator McClellan. This bill fuses two critical aspects of change that we need in Virginia: the need to figure out how to deal with mental health crises and how to reform our police departments. And so I would urge you to support Delegate Bourne's bill and move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Benson?
The only other caller on the line is Dylan Bishop.
Okay, Dylan Bishop, Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs, opposed to the bill.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The only comment that I have to offer here is a suggestion for another consideration of the patron and perhaps the committee. An issue that's facing our law enforcement officers and really stretching their manpower and capacity is TDO transports. So the BLES is wholly in favor of having these crisis response teams on the scene. But one thing we would ask the committee to consider and the patron to consider is perhaps when a TDO is required after the law enforcement and crisis response teams are on site, that the crisis response professionals or crisis response team conduct the TDO transport. They're much more qualified, and it's much more therapeutic for somebody that's in a mental health crisis to be transported with mental health professionals as opposed to uniformed law enforcement officers in their patrol car. So that's just a a consideration that I would ask the committee and the patron to keep in mind moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion that we report and re-refer the substitute to finance?
So moved.
All right, any further discussion? Call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenchain. Senator McDougall. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servo. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey.
Aye.
Senator Edwards. 8 ayes, 3 nays.
The motion carries 8-3 to report the substitute and re-refer to finance. Okay, thank you all very much. And Princess Blanding, thank you for being here. We certainly extend to you our deepest sympathies for your brother. The next bill is House Bill 5055, Delegate Herring, Law Enforcement Civilian Oversight Bodies. We had a similar bill, Senator Hashmi, Senate Bill 5035. Delegate Herring. Is Delegate Herring here? Is there a motion that we go ahead and conform House Bill 5055 to Senator Hashmi's Bill 5035? It's been moved and seconded that we conform, and this is our standard practice, since we have a similar bill, conform House Bill 5055 to Senate Bill 5035. Okay, it's been, well, first of all, I got to conform it. The substitute, all in favor of the motion to conform, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Senator, I hate to act on a bill with the patron is not here. Okay, there's some people here who would like to talk about it. Kim Rolla, Yolance Whitaker, Lynn Vinn, and Dylan Bishop.
Senator, I'm here.
I'm sorry?
There was a technical glitch. I'm here, Senator.
Okay, Delegate Herring, would you like to say a word about the bill?
Yes, I just quickly, the two main distinctions in my bill and Senator Hashmi's is that there is the Civilian Review Board is a mandate in my bill, and I would like the senators to understand the reason why is that was the thought of the House that we don't want to leave out jurisdictions from this process. That does not mean we're cutting the community out from the formation of the Civilian Review Board in terms of membership and sort of, how they handle issues. And the other thing was the inclusion of sheriffs was in the House version of the bill. As you all are probably aware, 35% of the law enforcement officers in the Commonwealth are sheriff office personnel. And they provide primary law enforcement in 65% of our localities. That includes some of our larger localities like Loudoun and Stafford. And those are the main distinctions of the bill.
Okay, any questions of the patron? The next speaker would be Kim Rolla, Legal Aid Justice Center. Yolance Whitaker, Legal Aid Justice Center.
Good afternoon, Chairman Edwards. This is Kim Rolla. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Edwards and committee members. As I said, my name is Kim Rolla. I'm the interim legal director of Legal Aid Justice Center's Civil Rights and Racial Justice Program. And as I've expressed to this committee before, we believe that civilian oversight of law enforcement is an essential part of police accountability that you're addressing this special session. It's about community power and it's about community voice in the conversations that you all have been having for the past several weeks. And the core features of House Leader Herring's bill actually mirror Senator Hashmi's bill that the full Senate passed yesterday. And we strongly believe that those are the features that will help strengthen the work that's already happening locally around the Commonwealth and is spreading. Those features are, it explicitly enables localities to create broad civilian oversight bodies. It allows those localities to decide to give those bodies subpoena power, and it allows localities to decide if the body should have final disciplinary authority. The community knows that both of these patrons, House Leader Herring and Senator Hashmi, are deeply committed to advancing civilian oversight in Virginia. And we believe that the House and the Senate can work the differences out in conference committee. And for that reason, I'm here to urge you to vote in favor of HB 5055 as conformed to Senator Hashmi's SB 5035. So these bills can proceed to conference and we can give our local communities the tools they need.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sherwood.
Thank you. I have a question for Ms. Roller really quick.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I would consider you much more of an expert on this than me. And one of the big differences between the two bills is one is a mandate, whether the jurisdiction has 1.1 million people or 4,000 as in the city of Norton. And I was curious whether or not the Legal Aid Justice Center thought that it was appropriate to have the exact same standard for every jurisdiction in the state, regardless of the size of the jurisdiction.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question, Senator Saraville. So our position has really been advocating for enabling legislation, and that is because really knowledge from our local campaigns about how difficult it is to for these bodies to be meaningful accountability mechanisms. We really are committed to these being a reflection of community power and community priorities, and we think that that means that localities move forward when there's a base of directly impacted people and people that care deeply about these issues that are able to drive the conversation and make sure that it is actually reflecting what the community thinks are the top priorities for police accountability, and also that that they are following through on those in a way that is not just, again, providing a veneer or a rubber stamp on, a veneer of accountability that acts as a rubber stamp on law enforcement behavior. We actually think that could be detrimental to organizing efforts. So again, I absolutely understand the need for us to have meaningful accountability mechanisms across the state, and I want those in every single jurisdiction. Our push for enabling legislation has really come from our experience with this specific tool of police accountability and a belief that for it to be meaningful, it needs to be driven by a base of community members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one more question.
Senator Sherwood.
Thank you. And also, I've been poking around looking on the internet and I found a list with, 100 or 200 jurisdictions have done this. But one of the points I think is going to have to be worked out in conference that came up on the floor in our floor debate is whether we have law enforcement involvement on that board. And I know at least the bill that came out of the Senate prohibits anyone who's currently employed for a law enforcement agency from serving on the board. And I've heard from some in law enforcement that, for example, in other professional disciplines like law, which I'm in, or medicine or accountancy, whatever, they have professionals within that profession operating on those disciplinary boards. And I was curious, based on your understanding of how this works in other parts of the country, whether there is a trend, a majority, whether most of these have some law enforcement or retired law enforcement members who actually sit on the civilian review board, or whether the vast majority of these are 100% citizens and nobody else.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Saraville, I believe, so you mentioned retired law enforcement officers. That actually would not be prohibited under under SB 5035 as passed. It defines
Correct.
Active law enforcement, and actually the definition of law enforcement used in the Senate bill would also allow active members of the Sheriff's Department, I think, because it defines law enforcement as police departments. But I will use the Charlottesville Initial Civilian Review Board as an example, because that's after the Unite the Right white supremacist violence in Charlottesville, we started working on police accountability there, and I've been doing that for over 3 years. And their bylaws that they passed actually created a space for a non-voting retired law enforcement officer to serve on the board. So again, avoiding kind of what people think may be a very real conflict of interest, where this is intentionally designed to be an external check on what has previously been a completely law enforcement controlled internal affairs process, but recognizing, I think what came up in the floor debate, and also I think actually the floor debate yesterday was brought up again, the kind of technical expertise or specific pool of knowledge that that individual may have. I think that that's an interesting approach that some municipalities have taken, to have them be a non-voting member on the board. And that is something that is reflected, I think, in civilian oversight bodies around the nation, of trying to, again, really create these bodies that the purpose of this tool is a reflection of community power and community priorities. And I think that that's really what you're seeing in kind of trying to carve out law enforcement as members, is to say that, like, this body is not where that should reside. And I think, you know, if a locality decides that they don't want to have any law enforcement members, whether retired or active, sitting on their body, you know, they could certainly seek training, which I know is another conversation that we've had. The National Associations for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement has provided extensive training to multiple bodies in the state of Virginia. So there's many ways.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think the question's been answered. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. The Alliance, Whitaker wants to say something briefly. And then Lynn Vin, and then Dylan Bishop, they want to say something. Keep it short, because I think we have this under control pretty well.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time today. My name is Yohamse Whitaker. I'm an organizer with the Legal Aid Justice Center, and I work alongside Virginians who are working across the state to develop solutions to our local policing issues. Like Tim was saying, civilian oversight is a crucial part of this, and HB 5055 closely mirrors Senator Hashmi's bill, which this body in full passed yesterday. And we are very much in favor of the fact that both bills enable localities to create civilian oversight of law enforcement, grant localities the authority to vest those bodies with subpoena power, and then allows localities to decide whether or not those bodies ought to have final disciplinary authority. And these are the tools that we need to do our job well. So I want to thank Leader Herring and Senator Hashmi for their stellar leadership on civilian oversight this session. They both are using this great opportunity to bring much needed changes that will build community power over policing. And I urge you to vote in favor of HB 5055.
Okay, thank you very much. Lynn Vin, again, keep it short, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Lynn Vin from the People's Coalition on Criminal Justice in Charlottesville, and I've been organizing for 3 years around Charlottesville's Police Civilian Review Board. The people who've been working on these issues on the ground understand that having civilian oversight is fundamental for police accountability, and police civilian review boards are an important vehicle for empowering local communities and amplifying their voices. The People's Coalition supports Senator Hashmi's bill that the full Senate passed yesterday. This is extremely important to everyone who's been fighting on the ground for strong civilian review boards, and I cannot emphasize that enough. And the People's Coalition is urging you to pass House Bill 5055.
Thank you very much. Did Dylan Bishop need to say anything? You're opposed to it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Again, on behalf of the Virginia law enforcement sheriffs here, we're opposed to this bill. We're not opposed to the idea of having civilian review boards in an advisory capacity. But when you have non-law enforcement officers and folks that aren't trained in law enforcement, or at least in the legal standards that that regulate law enforcement behavior, making binding determinations on the disciplinary determinations on the outcomes of officer-related incidents, that's where we draw the line, and we think that's an overstep. I think it's a little bit misguided to have folks that couldn't possibly understand the mindset that a law enforcement officer might be in, and the time constraints that a law enforcement officer might be in when they are acting or did something that's in question, making that disciplinary determination. So for that reason, the Virginia law enforcement sheriffs are opposed to this bill. We would make a an alternative suggestion that we make these civilian review boards advisory in nature. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there a motion that we?
I move that we report and refer to finance and substitute.
Moved and seconded to report and re-refer the substitute to finance to House Bill 5055. Call the roll, please.
Senator Sasslaw, Senator Normand, Senator Lucas, Senator Obenshain, Senator McDougall, Senator Stewart, Senator Stanley, Senator Chafin, Senator Deeds, Senator Peterson, Senator Servo, Senator McClellan, Senator Boysko, Senator Morrissey, Senator Edwards. 6 ayes, 2 nays.
The motion passes 6-2. Thank you very much, Delegate Herring. House Bill 5058, Delegate Hope. This is similar to Senator Lucas's bill, Senate Bill 5029. There's a motion we conform.
So moved. Mr. Chairman.
Been moved and seconded.
Mr. Chairman.
Who's this?
Delegate Hope.
Delegate Hope. Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a substitute that I've been working on with staff, and at the acceptance of Senator Lucas, which I alerted her that I was doing, I'd like to walk through that substitute because hopefully this does become the model that we use if it's appropriate with the committee and we can avoid a conference.
Okay, go ahead with your substitute, Delegate Hope.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if it's best to, maybe it's faster to do this, either Steve or Charles to do it, but basically what we do is we have similar offenses that we use for certain traffic offenses that we make secondary, but we create some consistency throughout the code. And so the language that we use throughout is that you see there is no law enforcement officer shall stop a motor vehicle for violation of this section. No evidence discovered or obtained as a result of the stop in violation of this subsection, including evidence discovered or obtained with the operator's consent, shall be admissible in any trial, hearing, or other proceeding. And so that's the consistency language that we put throughout. The other thing that we did is we heard some concern from the Virginia State Police regarding the section on marijuana odor. And I also did pay attention to the discussion at the during the Senate discussion about airports. And so we did exempt language in the marijuana odor section to exempt airports subject to that subsection and commercial vehicles operators as well. And so Mr. Benjamin, Mr. Quagliato, did I cover most everything?
Mr. Chairman, what I wanted to point out was that the bills that we have seen previously have not, in their wording, achieved what I now understand to have been the intent of the patrons. I now understand that the intent of the patrons has been to prohibit pretextual stops and prohibit the admission of evidence that is obtained or discovered during a traffic stop that is pretextual in nature. The bills that we have seen before, all that they did was prohibit the issuance of a citation for these various infractions. They did not prohibit the actual stop of the vehicle. And so the bills that the committee and the Senate have dealt with up till now, under those bills, an officer could still stop the vehicle for, say, an object dangling from the rearview mirror. And so long as they did not issue a citation for that infraction, they could still search the vehicle, and any evidence discovered could be admitted into evidence. The bill, the substitute that the delegate now brings to you, does in fact achieve the intent that I think was behind the Senate bill as well, in that it prohibits the vehicles from being stopped for the infraction that is described.
Okay. Is there a motion that we adopt the substitute?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Hope, with the concurrence of Senator Louise Lucas. The motion has been made and seconded by Senator Deeds to adopt the substitute of Delegate Hope. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no. Motion carries. There's one person who would like to speak against the bill, I believe. You still want to speak, Dylan Bishop?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
Again, on behalf of the Virginia law enforcement sheriffs, this bill is very problematic for our law enforcement officers. And from the words of the members of the Virginia law enforcement officers, they feel like they're protecting their community with their hands tied behind their back. Much of their policing is done by means of community policing. Oftentimes they know the folks that are involved in nefarious activities, the folks that are related to folks related to nefarious activities, and a lot of their policing work is done through these means. So that is our general objection to this, but there's a technical aspect of this which I think should cause concern to our attorneys on the committee and in the Senate generally. And it comes down to an issue of waiver. I counted just briefly in the last 30 seconds at least 8 different references where evidence obtained with the operator's consent would still not be admissible in trial. And I think that is a huge overstep. It does away with personal autonomy if the person who stopped in that vehicle gives a police officer consent to search that vehicle or any number of other things. Why would that be prevented from being admissible in trial?
Mr. Chairman?
I think that's a huge
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Morsi.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the gentleman that was just speaking, I'm sorry, I want to refer to him by his full name. Who was that?
Dylan Bishop.
John Fisher. Oh, Dylan Bishop. Mr. Bishop, you said that you thought it was an overstep that if the officer then stops for a minor offense but then gains consent. Did I understand you correctly?
I believe that would be, I believe that's included in my sentiment. Yes, sir.
Here is the problem. An individual is stopped for dangling object or the single light above the license plate or something else that's minor, and then the person is asked by the law enforcement, do you object or do you mind if I search the car? Do you understand that most people in that situation don't have the wherewithal to say, no, you actually can't search my car, and almost always consent is given for that very minor offense. Do you realize that?
Yes, sir, I do. And,
okay.
And this may be entering the realm of pedagogy, but what happens if an officer were to make a stop? And if it's okay with the chairman, I'd like to ask Senator Morsi a question.
Just answer the question.
What happens to evidence that's ascertained as a result of the plain sight doctrine? For example, if an officer were to pull over a young lady because of a dangling object, approaches the vehicle and then sees a kilo of cocaine in the back seat, would that not be admissible in court either under these under this proposed legislation?
Mr. Chairman, that's plain view. That has nothing to do with the officer not seeing any indicia of criminal activity and then saying to that same young lady who...
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Morsi.
To that same young lady, may I search your car having not seen any evidence of any criminal activity?
Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to shortcut the argument with the witness, but since we've adopted the substitute, I'd like to go ahead and report it and refer it to finance, refer it to finance.
Been moved and seconded that the substitute be reported and referred to finance. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Normand. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougall. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds.
Aye.
Senator Peterson. Senator Servell. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. Ayes 8, noes 1.
Motion carries 8-1. Delegate Mullen, House Bill 5062.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see you all. My House Bill 5062 is an analog to Senator Serville's 5033. I don't want to belabor the committee or waste anyone's time. If it's the intention of the committee to overlay his, honestly, excellent bill on mine, and then we go into conference, I don't want to waste anyone else.
Mr. Chairman, I would make that motion.
There you go.
Senator Serville's motion is to, go ahead, what's the motion?
To conform some bill I put in, and I can't remember the number of it.
Senate Bill 5033.
There you go. Conform
House
5062 to
House
that.
Bill 5062 to be conformed to Senate Bill 5033. It's been moved and seconded by Senator Serville and Senator Deeds. And is all in favor of the motion to conform, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Is there a motion that...
Move to report and refer.
Okay, Senator Deeds moves that the substitute to House Bill 5062 be reported and re-referred to Finance. Has been seconded by Senator Boysko. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Normand. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougall. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servell. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. Ayes 8, noes 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The motion carries 8-1. House Bill 5072, Delegate Lopez, similar to Senate Bill 5024, Senator Lucas's bill, law enforcement misconduct.
Mr. Chairman, I move we conform that to Senator Lucas's bill.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we report and re-refer the substitute to finance. Delegate Lopez, do you have any necessity to say anything?
No, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't believe there's anybody signed up to speak. The motion been made to report and re-refer to finance the substitute to House Bill 5072. Call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Normand.
Here, Saslaw is here.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Normand. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougall. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servell. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. Ayes 8, noes 1.
The next bill is...
Mr. Chairman, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's delegate hearing, House Bill 5146, automatic expungement, similar to Senator Deeds' bill 5043. Is there a motion that we conform?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to conform. Yes, there are a lot of issues in this bill that we need to discuss. I think Congress is probably the place to do that. Second motion to conform.
Been made and seconded to conform House Bill 5146 to Senator Deeds Senate Bill 5043. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed no. Motion carries. This has got to be worked on in conference. The delegate hearing, you want to say anything before we act on this?
Yes. Just only one thing to let you all know that this did go through appropriations because there certainly was a fiscal impact in terms of updating the state police system as well as some court systems, which is well overdue. This bill is broader than Senator Dean's bill, requiring automatic expungement for certain crimes after 8 years after completed sentence. But that's essentially the bill, and I appreciate you all keeping it moving so we can have discussions. I appreciate it.
Call the roll.
Senator Saslaw, Senator Norment, Senator Lucas, Senator Obenshain, Senator McDougal, Senator Stewart, Senator Stanley, Senator Chafin.
No.
Senator Deeds, Senator Peterson, Senator Surville, Senator McClellan, Senator Boysko, Senator Morrissey, Senator Edwards.
Aye.
Ayes 8, noes 1.
The motion carries 8-1. The Red Sox won. All right. House Bill 5068. This is Ayala's bill, automatic exemption of emergency relief payments during state of emergency. I think the bankers like this bill. Delegate Ayala, are you there?
Hi, Senator Edwards. How are you?
I'm sorry?
I said, good afternoon, Senator. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. You said it. I think you briefly summarized this. It does have a substitute, so I would leave that at your feet to make the appropriate motion.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Senator Deeds moves a substitute to House Bill 5068. Senator. It's been seconded. All in favor of the motion to adopt the substitute, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Council, could somebody explain the substitute?
Yes, Senator, Mr. Chairman, I can explain it for you if you'd like.
Okay.
I will essentially tell you this bill is what I'm carrying on behalf of the Attorney General. There's been a discussion, as you mentioned a few moments ago, that the Virginia Bankers Association just to amend some of the language, which are just technical in nature, and I believe they fully support the substitute as indicated earlier. And then the spirit of this bill is to prevent creditors from forcefully garnishing or seizing federal and state emergency aid payments given to Virginians. So current and state federal laws do not exempt from garnishments from the emergency aid payments, such as COVID-19 emergency stimulus payments.
Is there any opposition to this bill? Is there a motion that the bankers want it, the Attorney General wants it? I know of no opposition. Nobody else wants to speak. Is there a motion that the substitute be reported and re-referred to finance? Been moved and seconded that the substitute be reported and re-referred to finance. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslaw, Senator Norment, Senator Lucas, Senator Obenshain, Senator McDougal, Senator Stewart, Senator Stanley, Senator Chafin.
Yes.
Senator Deeds, Senator Peterson, Senator Surville, Senator McClellan, Senator Boysko, Senator Morrissey, Senator Edwards.
Aye.
Ayes 9, noes 0.
Ayes 9, noes 0. The motion carries. Now, as far as I have, the last bill, I think, is House Bill 5098, Delegate Askew's bill having to do with hate crimes, falsely summoning or giving false reports to law enforcement officers. Penalty. Is Delegate Askew there?
I'm sorry, how you doing today, Mr. Chair?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead. Present the bill.
Yes, sir. I think you did a pretty good job explaining in the brief presentation, but members of the committee, 5098 amends the current statute concerning falsely summoning or giving false reports to law enforcement officials. That if a person intentionally gives a false report as the commission of any crime to any law enforcement official or calls or summons any law enforcement official against one person or another person because of his race, religion, conviction, gender, disability, gender identity, sexual orientation, color, or national origin, be charged with a Class 6 felony.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? This basically increases it to a class 6 felony from a class 1 misdemeanor, basically, right?
It creates a new class 6 felony, or it takes a class 1 misdemeanor to a class 6 felony.
Any discussion?
It's a new crime, yeah.
Yeah, it creates a new crime of class 6. It's already a class 1 misdemeanor.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This creates a new felony if somebody makes a false report because of someone's race, religious conviction, gender, disability, gender identity, etc. Right now, it's only a misdemeanor to make a false call, but this creates the felony. This is based on the Central Park situation, but it's really a new crime.
Let me explain. But yeah, it's already a misdemeanor, but if you do it intentionally for reasons of hate because of the person's race, religion, etc., then it becomes a class 6 felony.
Yes, sir.
That's all it does, right? Any discussion? Anybody want to speak? Delegate Askew? Nobody else wants to speak. All right, is there a motion that the bill be reported and re-referred to finance?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor of the motion? Call the roll.
Senator Sasslaw, Senator Norment, Senator Lucas, Senator Obenshain. I'm sorry. Thank you. Senator McDougal, Senator Stewart, Senator Stanley, Senator Chafin, Senator Deeds.
Aye.
Senator Peterson, Senator Serval, Senator McClellan, Senator Boysko, Senator Morrissey, Senator Edwards.
Aye.
7 ayes, 2 nays.
7 ayes, 2 nays. The bill carries. And report and re-referred to finance. Is there anything else to come before the committee? Is any other bills?
No, sir.
Hallelujah. Well, thank you all very much. The committee will rise.